Welcome everyone to another episode of the Kickin' Show. Today it's just me, Justin Schuoler, out here on the West Coast, and our iRacing expert, Seth Eggert. Zach is out being his movie star self, and well, if we ever do release that blooper reel, you'll know that Jerry's out in a bar talking about drunk strawberries. So we're going to do the show just to keep it a little bit more family friendly. Seth, how are things out there for you?
Doing well. Let's see. As long as tomorrow goes off without a hitch anyway, doing well.
That's good. That's good. Well, we're coming out of our Olympic break. I know everyone's excited to get back into racing. Motocross is resuming next weekend after Chase Sexton winning at Washougal. But first, on Monday, we all in the motorsports industry were hit with profound sadness at the news of Bob Jenkins passing. The NMPA releasing a statement that it is with profound sadness that we learned on Monday of the passing of Bob Jenkins, a revered broadcaster who left an indelible mark on the sport of auto racing. It was Jenkins' voice that fans of the Indianapolis 500 heard his decade-long tenure as the track announcer there. Jenkins was a pioneering anchor leading ESPN's coverage of NASCAR racing, first with Larry Newber and later with Ned Jarrett and the late Benny Parsons in the booth. His professional credits aside, Jenkins was a quality human being, a generous colleague, and a friend to all who had the pleasure to work with him. The racing community is diminished significantly by the loss of such a titan of the sport, and that comes from the National Motorsports Press Association. But Seth, I know you've been involved with iRacing a lot,
Yep.
And even in there, you have tons of announcers who are making a mark for themselves. You know, people who are climbing the ladder. I'm thinking of James Pike and other big names like that. But you've got Monday Night Racing League and NASCAR iRacing Coca-Cola Esports Series. They've got some big time announcers too. So I'm sure you've got some stories there with all that kind of stuff.
I do. As a matter of fact, Bob Jenkins actually called 5 events for Monday Night Racing, and I'm pretty sure the last event he ever called was the Monday Night Racing IndyCar race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway last year, which had Mario Andretti, Anthony Alfredo, Parker Klingerman, Landon Castle, I think Steve Myers, Ron Capps. I mean, I can keep listing people from iRacing, people from the industry that were in the race. But as somebody in the media, Bob Jenkins' quote, which you're probably going to hear me say later, he always said he was a fan that got lucky. And I've always thought in the same way, because I got my start on iRacing, and I was able to translate that into a opportunity writing first for Motorsports Tribune and then now with Kicking Tires. And one thing I never thought would happen would be on iRacing for Bob Jenkins to call my name when I was battling for the lead in a race on iRacing. And the fact that that even happened once, let alone twice, it's something I'm always going to remember.
Yeah, and I think you had helped me try to qualify for that race, and I came up just one or two spots short.
Yes, I was spotting you in that race, and yeah, I want to say it was Robert Hill that won that qualifier race, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I can't remember who won. I know I finished third and was just a couple spots short.
Yeah,
but, man, I can't imagine having such a legendary man be on the mic and say your name, battling for the lead, let alone for any position.
Yeah.
But no, that's it's such a huge loss. I remember when Benny Parsons passed away. I loved hearing him in the booth because I never really got to watch him race. As a kid, I wasn't quite old enough to see that, but no, when you see some of these guys who really laid down the foundation of our sport of what we know it as now, and you start to hear them passing away, it definitely hits the younger crowd a little bit more, especially the younger crowd who really has an appreciation for the longevity of the sport. So definitely.
Yeah. Bob isn't the only major sports announcer, at least in motorsports, that has passed away this year. Earlier this year, from Formula One, Murray Walker passed away. Granted, we don't cover Formula One per se here at Kickin', but I do want to at least acknowledge that Bob isn't the only one. Not that I'm trying to dilute his legacy,
No,
but
of course not.
I'm trying to recognize Murray's legacy as well, because we didn't when he passed. And I want to say that might have been because that might have been during the break, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So kind of a sorrowful way to start off, but definitely want to recognize one of the all-time greats that has been around the sport for so long. But out of North Carolina, we got some exciting news. I know a lot of people have been looking forward and wanting to bring back some old tracks out there. And Seth, you just stumbled across something on the Charlotte Observer about a budget increase for these tracks.
Yes, Dale Jr. and Marcus Smith actually went to the North Carolina legislature earlier today before their appropriations hearing to lobby for an increase in motorsports funding and to try to get what the governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, had recommended, which was $10 million to Charlotte Motor Speedway, Rockingham Speedway, and North Wilkesboro Speedway. Well, the North Carolina legislature had their hearing, and instead of the $30 million, 10 for each track that the governor had recommended, they are recommending $45 million combined, $15 million to Charlotte Motor Speedway, which of the three is the most active right now. $10 million to Rockingham, which they are scheduled, if the tire issues fix themselves anyway, with testing, they are scheduled to host a Cars Tour late model race later this year.
Ooh.
And $20 million to Wilkes County for North Wilkesboro Speedway. All of this money is meant to be used for water, sewer, and related infrastructure projects to service the tracks.
That's awesome. That pretty much is the foundation of getting yourself up and running again right there.
Yeah. For Charlotte Motor Speedway, I know they've recently been repaving and reconfiguring the access roads outside the track. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if this money goes to maybe working on some more of those, because I know there's some that are still somewhat gravel. For Rockingham, I'll be honest, I've been there. It's a it's a 2-lane road, 1 lane in each direction out to and from the track. Hopefully that money can be used to widen that road, because that's the main issue that track has suffered from, at least from what I have been able to tell as a outside observer at the time. And $20 million for North Wilkesboro. Granted, I know it might need more money than that, but don't forget Marcus Lemonis has also pledged money to that track as well. So if you combine both of those, there might be enough there to at least rebuild the facilities, redo the infrastructure, at least inside the track. I can't speak for outside the track, but maybe, just maybe, they can rework that track and bring it back to life. I don't know if it would be NASCAR. I don't know if it would at least be the Truck Series, maybe the Modifieds or ARCA, but maybe they could at least revitalize and bring that track back from the dead.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really exciting, because I still remember them racing at Rockingham. I would love to see that come back. I know there's a lot of older people in the previous generation who saw races at North Wilkesboro and stuff like that. They would truly appreciate that. So this is going to be really exciting to kind of see some of these older tracks get revived and rejuvenated. over time. So who knows, in the next 5 years, we're going to see one, maybe both of those tracks back on the schedule, at least for hopefully the Truck or the Xfinity Series, if not for the Cup Series for sure. But before we get into the races this past week, because obviously being on the Olympic break, not really a lot to talk about, unless we want to talk about Kyle Busch doing his white boy twerking on Instagram. That was quite hilarious. You're just
Moving on.
But no, everyone having a blast on vacations and stuff like that. I know a few guys stayed around local. I know, I think it was Ryan Preece was someone who raced a lot during the
Alex
break.
Bowman did.
Alex Bowman, and then
Mike
Josh Berry.
Snyder.
Yeah,
Mike Snyder just I think Mike Snyder just stayed in Charlotte, to be honest.
Yeah, probably. But no, Josh Berry did quite a few races.
Yeah.
There were some guys that just did not take a break and just kept racing. But before we talk about Watkins Glen, Seth, we have a special guest for today, actually.
So instead of just talking about iRacing for a short 5, maybe 10-minute segment, we are actually going to be joined by Jeff Maconi of Maconi Setup Shop. And in fact, I think he's joining us now. Tonight, we're joined by Jeff Maconi of Maconi Setup Shop. He works a lot on iRacing with several different teams, several different leagues, including Monday Night Racing. He's made setups for different Podium Esports events. And he has sponsored Richmond Raceway Esports in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. Jeff, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. It's always something going on, always something keeping me busy, but I love every second of it.
And speaking of all of that work, what are you doing on iRacing right now besides all of that? Because it seems like you're always having your hands in a little bit of everything lately.
Oh, man. I am constantly answering messages. This past week, a lot of time has been spent with the Mount Washington hill climb. It was sort of hinted at on social media the day before it released. And so we have our little group chat with staff and everything. And we were sitting there going, they're going to drop this tomorrow. Like, we got to get ready. They're going to drop this tomorrow. So a lot of just trying to keep up with iRacing and try and, because we work a lot with them, but we don't work for them. So we know, like, hey, the Washington Hill climb is coming because of all the social media posts and everything, but we'll get like little breadcrumbs along the way. They won't outright say what's coming, but we get these little breadcrumbs along the way. But a lot of that, a lot of work with different leagues and teams and companies and everything else. We've sort of taken on the responsibility as of late. I say responsibility. We've had the opportunity as of late to bring a lot of real world tracks and companies and teams and everything into the virtual world. And there is so much that goes on behind the scenes with that. I wish it was as easy as, hey, they just call me up. Hey, Jeff, we want to get in on the virtual world. We want you to do it. Okay. Here's a check. Bye. But unfortunately it's not. There's so much that goes in behind the scenes with planning and licensing and marketing. And, we have anytime we put out a flyer with someone else's logo on it, we have to get it checked, and then they send back revisions and we make those revisions, and then we have to send it back to get checked again. So there's so many moving pieces behind the scenes, but what I guess the answer to what am I doing now with iRacing, a little bit of everything, but that's the best way to have it.
Well, tell us about that hill climb. Like, what are you doing with that? That sounds something way out of left field of iRacing.
Yeah, it really came as a shock. I think it was about 2 weeks before it was released that it was announced that they were scanning the Mount Washington hill climb and releasing it. And it's unlike anything else iRacing has ever put out. So it's point A to point B racing, not, go around the track however many times or however many times in a set amount of time for like an endurance race. Your goal is to get from the bottom of the mountain to the top, or the top to the bottom. So
all in one piece and not like rolling down, right?
Right. You can't really go off the track. And if you've ever been to Mount Washington, that the roads are narrow and there's no guardrails on the side. Like, I've been there personally. I grew up in New England. Like, it is scary to drive up it. Like, it's you do it and you're like, wow, this is really something else. And everyone here has those bumper stickers of this car climbed Mount Washington and everything else, but it's it's scary. So when you're doing that in the real world at 35 to 40 miles an hour, you're looking over the side going, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And then you're doing it on iRacing at 85 to 120 miles an hour, if not faster in some cars. And you are just sitting there petrified. And I race in VR. So that first run, my first run was from the top of the mountain to the bottom. I was sitting there going, I do not know if I can do this. Like, I was just wide-eyed behind my VR headset, just terrified. But a lot of it has been testing and building setups. We don't really do much with the rallycross side, but we've been familiar with it. We've tried it out. There's just not much interest in people buying setups for it. So, we'll help people out with things like that. But we actually put together setups for the 3 rallycross cars and the cup car as well. Just to get ready, we're expecting a lot of fun events coming up on that. I can't say too much on future events, but there's definitely going to be a lot of really cool stuff coming with the Mount Washington Hill Climb. That is for sure.
Well, I was just about to ask. It sounds like they are going in that direction of like the Dirt video games, the Dirt series, and the WRC. I think WRC is coming out with their 10th version later this year, something like that. Is that kind of what you're seeing iRacing do as well, as going onto that international scope of the whole point A, point B rally racing stuff?
I think they're definitely going to experiment with it and have some fun with it, and really make it so that anyone can jump in. If you're a fan of motorsports, there should be a place for you on iRacing. So the first question that I've been hearing all day today, and these past few weeks and everything is, well, if they're doing a point A to point B rally style race, are we going to get drag racing? And, are we going to get motorcycle racing? Are we going to get all these different forms? And
Karting,
I mean, there's so many, karting, there's so many different things going on that they can and should get in. So I think iRacing is going to continue expanding into these different types of racing. I would love to see karting. I would love to see, all these different events. And if they add in 2 or 3 more tracks, I think, was it the Goodwood Festival over in Europe?
Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yeah, that would be incredible. That would be so cool to do. There's so many opportunities. I think iRacing can definitely use Mount Washington as a test and grow from there.
And I know some of our friends have already gone and tested various vehicles. Our friend Justin Malillo might have been stuck in a tree with a truck. AJ Henderson, the controller king, might have been upside down with a tree. And Mark Verbillis from the Monday Night Racing League, he and a few others have apparently come up with a soapbox challenge. Take the Formula V car, pop it into gear, and then pop it back into neutral and try to get all the way down the mountain as fast as you can.
Oh, that's awesome. That is an awesome idea. That I might have to put something together for that, like this weekend. Give like, hey, here's $10 to the fastest soapbox time. Like that would be something cool.
Yeah,
definitely a lot of opportunities there. But yeah, there's so many crazy combinations. Surprisingly, the fastest car that I've been able to get from point A to point B in is actually the rally car, the VW Beetle, because I don't own the other 2 personally. But I've gotten down from the top to the bottom in the VW Beetle in 5 minutes 51 seconds is my personal best time. I've seen some of the other rally cars do it in like 5.5 minutes, so there's definitely a lot of speed out there, and I don't even have a handbrake, so I'm not any good whatsoever. But bottom to top, I actually did the Nissan GTZ, like the camel car. That thing on the baseline high downforce setup is insanely cool, and I actually ran about half the season last season, 21S2, in that camel series. I didn't do too well. I was not putting in enough time or effort with those cars to be good at them, but the setups that I had were pretty good. And then I would take those setups that I built for, I think I did Okayama, and I forget what the other track was, but it actually, I threw them in the car and it worked well for the hill climb. So the Nissan is actually pretty fun to go up in.
You know which car I think would be interesting, and mainly because J.R. Hildebrand was supposed to do it at Pikes Peak this year until, again, it got postponed due to COVID, was taking IndyCar up Pikes Peak. So I could imagine doing that on Mount Washington and just seeing what happens, or even the Dallara IR01.
Yeah, I've seen the IR01 going up. Gary Sexton
Yep.
put up a session earlier today, and that's where I drove the Nissan. But there were people doing it in like Legends cars, but the fastest car was the IR01, and you could make it up in about I want to say about 5 minutes 20 seconds. So those things are just fast.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite races on iRacing? Not just the ones you've competed in, but even the ones you've helped out with, whether it's helping out Podium Esports with events, Monday Night Racing, etc.
Well, on a personal level, I'm biased towards the short tracks. I love modifieds. I love, Martinsville and Bristol and Stafford and all these short tracks. They are just so much fun. So if I get to choose my personal favorites, I love those short track races like that. But I'd say my favorite types of races that I've been involved with and helped with are definitely all the charity events that we've been able to put on. Those are just it's really special to me when we get to take something that we do for fun, something that a lot of us do as a hobby, an expensive one at that, but we're all on iRacing to have fun because we enjoy it. We love racing, we love motorsports, and it's such a tight-knit community. And in the unfortunate times where we have, sad circumstances, whether it's, raising funeral money for someone in the iRacing community or someone close to them, or, someone with health issues that they're battling and they need, money just to cover them while they're not at work, while the medical bills are piling up and everything. The fact that we can take something that we do for fun and do real world good and make a difference there is special to me beyond words. A couple weeks ago, we did a race, the Stay Strong Pete Twin 75s, and it was the Tour Mods and Super Late models at North Wilkesboro. 2 races, 75 laps each, and we raised over $2,500 for Pete Polini, someone, he's, one of our sponsored drivers at Maconi Setup Shop, but he's more importantly than that, he's a friend to a lot of people on the service. And he was battling throat cancer and having a rough go with it because, so the treatment for cancer is they just zap all the cells. So when you are getting your throat zapped, it's hard to eat. It's hard to really go about your day-to-day life. And when those radiation and chemotherapy treatments, they are indiscriminatory. They kill any cell that's there, not just the cancer cells. And so when you have that and it's hard to eat and hard to talk and go about your daily life, you can't go back to work right away. You have to take that time off and recover because it's so brutal. And we've done a couple charity races for him. We're going to be doing more, but it's incredible to be able to do events for people like that and to make a difference with those events and help people and see the community all come together. Cause it's not like, 4 or 5 people donating a bunch of money. It's like 50, 60, 70 people all chipping in little bits and making a difference. And those are definitely my favorite races. And it's really special to see those come together.
I'm sure the iRacing community is really, grateful for everything that you've been putting into the community as a whole and all that stuff. And obviously you've built a strong name for yourself, but let's kind of rewind that tape a little bit and see, if you remember when your first race was where you saw another big name in the entry list of that same race that you're competing in?
I would say the first time something like that happened was probably with Anthony Alfredo, who's a close friend of mine. I've known him since he was back running K&N. And that's when I was working the media circuit as well with NASCAR, where if I was within driving distance of a track or could get to a track and get a credential, I would just show up and record stuff from my podcast at the time. And I met Anthony and he's been amazing, but he was definitely the first big name that I raced with. But there have been other times where I've been in there and, you see all these amazing people. I would say the first major one that comes to mind though was I've been on iRacing for about 3 years now, but I've only seen Dale Jr. on there like once or twice. And it was in April of 2020, May of 2020, somewhere in there. And this was right after the setup shop had started up. We were just doing like short track stuff, so like 3 or 4 cars. And I was in an SK modified race at Martinsville with him. And I had started further back and I was driving through the field. I actually passed him and I was like through the roof about it. And then we were talking about setups in the chat, and Dale at the time was streaming. And I still got the video. I said like, yeah, anyone that needs help with the setup, I'm more than happy to help you. And he goes, where's he running? Running third? He's only a second and a half off. And he comes on the mic. He goes, hey, Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll take that sit up. I'm like, oh my God. Like Dale Jr.'s asking me for one of my setups. Like, and I go, oh man.
Blank checks coming your way.
I go, man, I don't really know. Like, I don't want to just give it away. I'm like, no, absolutely, dude. That is totally fine. And we hung out for a couple minutes afterwards. I was like talking to him. He goes, yeah, I tried out a South Boston setup and it wasn't really working and all this other stuff. I go, well, I took a Stafford setup and I sort of changed the gear and did some work with the front end. But that was definitely that first moment for me after, at the time, 2 years on the service of, oh my gosh, I'm in the presence of someone famous. And, I was starstruck, fangirling, whatever you want to call it. I couldn't believe it, but that was really cool.
And with that, you mentioned that you're friends with Anthony Alfredo. When did you first start working with him on iRacing?
So now he and I have different accounts of this story, but I have the audio tapes to back this up. I, at the time, ran a radio show out at Purdue University. I just graduated from there in May, but at the time I was a sophomore. And in the basement of my dorm, Wiley Hall, there was a radio station. And I had Anthony on. I invited him to come on the show, and he was very gracious and did so. And we were talking about iRacing, and he was not on iRacing at the time. He had an account, but he hadn't used it in a while, and he was just sort of sitting dormant. And I was like, man, I bet if I were, if we were to race together on there, I could beat you, no problem. He's like, oh, there's no way, man. My stats are all super old, but I could beat you. And I pulled up his stats live on air, and I still have the recording somewhere. And his stats were so bad. He was like getting beat in like the Street Stocks rookie series. And this is from, I think it was from like 2013 when he was 15 years old. Like he had just built his computer and everything. And I gave him a hard enough time that he got back on iRacing, and then he and I would race together from there. So we did Street Stocks and we did a ton of modifieds. He loves racing the modifieds. They are a ton of fun, the tour mods. Because that's what I used to run. I made my name on iRacing running the tour mods. I was the first person to hit 100 wins in those. I had the record for most wins overall, most wins in a season. I still hold the record for most wins at New Hampshire, Martinsville, Stafford, and probably a couple other places that I don't even know about. But I love the tour mods. And so we ran a lot of those when we would run together. And yeah, I take full responsibility for getting him back on there. And I still remember the day that he passed me in iRating. And now we're just about even, somewhere in the 4,000 range, going back and forth with it. But there is no one that I have met on iRacing in all of my time on there, my thousands of races and all the different people I've raced against. There is no one that is more competitive and that I want to beat more when I'm racing than Anthony Alfredo. If I'm in a race with him, I'm going to do everything I can except wreck the guy to get around him and try and beat him. But it is just, we are dead even. I mean, skill wise, we are dead even.
That sounds like a Kyle Larson and a Christopher Bell kind of relationship. You guys are so competitive on the track.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is just there's one video. This was actually the first time I met Dave Cameron, the YouTuber, and started working with him as well. Not many people know that we do all of Dave Cameron's asphalt oval setups. So he's got access to all those. He's an amazing guy. Love talking to him. As of the time of recording this, it's his birthday. So I want to say happy birthday, Dave. And I'm going to send that over to him. So I got that in, but he is an amazing person as well. But in the race where Anthony and I met Dave Cameron, it was a fixed tour mod race at Iowa Speedway. So we had the same setup, same everything. It was like a 16-20 car field. So a big race for that series. And we are there and it's like 5-10, I think it was like 5 laps to go. And we get the restart and we are just side by side. We're pulling away from the entire field. We're easily the fastest guys out there. And we are side by side, lap after lap after lap after lap. And it came down to the line and he beat me by maybe an inch. I think it was like 0.02 of a second. And it, I still get sometimes people tweeting the clip at me where he beats me to the line and the results pop up and Anthony's going, yes, yes, yes. And I'm just screaming in agony. No.
And unfortunately, you reminded me of a modified race I ran at Iowa. God, it has to be like 6 years ago. I was blowing the field away. And this is when the races were long enough that you had pit stops.
Mm-hmm.
I was 6 laps short on fuel.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
that is the worst.
Yeah.
That is the worst.
Man.
And I want to say there was somebody, one of the big names in that race, but I can't remember who it was. I think he got wrecked out early, so I don't want to say who I'm thinking in case I'm wrong, but like you said, we can blame you for bringing Anthony Alfredo back onto the service. Yep. And I'll blame you for that as far as him kicking our butts in the Monday Night Racing League. But
yes,
how did you get connected with Monday Night Racing and Richmond Raceway Esports and Podium?
Well, oh man, those are all 3 crazy relationships that all sort of came to a head at once. So I got linked up with Podium because when I was still getting my feet wet on iRacing, like I mentioned earlier, I was really well known in the short track community. I was the best in the modifieds on the old chassis and tire model and everything. I'm still okay, but I'm not nearly as good as I once was because I don't sit and run them all day anymore. But I was really good and well known for those. And I got into broadcasting with a guy named Phil Lacasse, who was local to New England. Gave me a spot up with Full Velocity Racing Network calling races for the East-West Racing Series. And it was a ton of fun working with him up in the booth and everyone at Full Velocity Racing Network. And with that, I sort of got into broadcasting. And when the when the whole pandemic and everything started in March of last year, I was also working at Stafford Motor Speedway as an announcer in real life. So when I sort of got the call from them, from Stafford, that they wanted to do a virtual series, not only was I building the setups for that series, I was also calling them. And because they wanted me on as the voice of East Stafford Speedway, I got hooked up with GSRC, the Global Sim Racing Channel, and Sean Ambrose and that whole team there. So I spent some time calling races with them, and I loved working with them. They're amazing people over there. And through all that, I sort of built up a repertoire, and I was like, okay, I can do setups on the side, and I'm going to be an iRacing broadcast. So that's the way it looked at the time. And I got the call, I think it was the day of the NASCAR Road to Pro finale, and I think it was it couldn't have been November of last year. It was
the finale would have been December.
I don't think it was that late. It was whatever race was at Phoenix. So whichever, if that was the end of the series,
that'd be Road to Pro. Then then might have been October.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was October, the end of Road to Pro, before it was split into the 2 rounds like it is now. And they needed someone up in the booth and to help them call the race. And I was like, oh my gosh, Podium Esports wants me. That's insane. So I got to go up there and work with James Pike. That was the first time I worked with him, and Ryan Bauer and that whole team there. So that was really phenomenal, and that went really well. And from there, we just, I would keep in touch with Ryan Bauer, the executive producer there. We talked a bunch, but I didn't really start picking up work a lot with them. I do a couple special events here and there, but when Road to Pro started coming around for this year and they got the call again of, hey, we want Podium to broadcast it, they said, I got a message one day or a call one day, and it was Ryan Bauer, and he said, hey, I want you to be the analyst for the NASCAR Road to Pro series. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. And at this point I had sort of gotten out of iRacing broadcasting. I was focused entirely on the setup shop. I was focused on building the company and everything else, and focused on school because I was still a full-time student and everything. Just so much going on in my life. It was absolutely crazy. And I was like, yeah, I'd be honored to. And so I've been helping out and calling races with them, and that sort of really got that relationship with Podium going and kicked it into overdrive with everything going on, and being able to call races with them every other Thursday night. It's been absolutely amazing. I never really saw myself as being the head analyst for the NASCAR Road to Pro Series. And then it all just sort of came together. And with Monday Night Racing, it was Anthony running in the series, and I would help him out there with, giving tips and tricks and all that for the different tracks, because that's a fixed setup series. And I had sort of heard of it, and they had come to me asking about some advertising and sponsorship, and we had made it all work. And then I got to go down to Charlotte, where they did their real world race. They did a real world go-kart race, and that was a ton of fun.
I was there.
I know, we met there. That was a ton of fun. And I met Ford Martin in person, the guy behind the scenes there, that the brains behind the operation. I met him, I talked to him, and then we sort of put a deal together where we're the last lap sponsor for the event. And then we also, for any track that doesn't have an iRacing setup or a good iRacing setup that works for the time of day and conditions they want to run, I would build the setup for them. And we would get, we get sponsorship perks and everything else throughout there. But it's going to be so much, it's gotten to be so much fun working with them. It's such an amazing league. And there's more news coming down the pipeline with Maconi Setup Shop and myself with that league. So I'm very excited when that all comes around, but there's a lot of cool things in the works.
Well, can I just say, this is me being a little selfish. Can you make some of the steps a little tighter for my liking?
I'll tell you what, Ford has come back to us and said, give us something racy, give us something that people can drive, give us something loose. I want something that can run any lane of the track. And I remember, I think it was Atlanta, and every time we'd get it, every time Ford would get the setup, he'd go, we need it looser. We need something racier. And I'm like, dude, I'm throwing everything I've got at this to make it as racy as possible. And David Schildhouse hated the setup. He was like,
I remember that.
He's like, this thing is so bad to drive. It's this, it's that. And I'm like, I'm watching, I'm going, dude, I'm just doing what Ford asked me. Like, oh man. And then he won the race.
See, that was one of my favorite races and setups so far. I started like 38th or so, and I was able to drive my way through the field to the lead during pit stops. Was a lap down after pit stops, but catching the leader, caught a caution, got the free pass, and got myself back up to, I think it was 13th or so when the checkered flag waved. And that's been one of my favorite races so far, at least with one of your sets, no offense, but one of my favorite races so far, just because I haven't been that competitive in the league other than on super speedways. So that showed me a little bit more that I am still a little competitive. I might be a little rusty, but I am competitive.
There you go. And yeah, that one especially was one that we had to do quite a few revisions on to make sure Ford was happy. So that was a fun one though. I enjoyed that one. And the Darlington race coming up, we're going to have something together for that. It's going to be pretty similar to what we gave people for the Podium Retro 500 preliminary races. So we built those setups. And funny story there, that was a miscommunication of 3 different people running the event, and everyone thought someone else had asked me to build the setup. So then the day before the first qualifier race, I get a text saying, hey, is that setup ready, by the way? And I go, I don't know what you're talking about. And they go, the 87 cars at Darlington that you're supposed to have built. And I went, okay, no one asked me for this, so I can get on this right away. Also, how much I hate the 87 cars. You know how much I hate Darlington. So 6 hours of, tears and agony later, I sent them the setup and I said, this is as stable as I can make this thing. You just got to drive it, whatever feels comfortable, but it's very easy to overdrive this thing and burn it off. Like, there's nothing more I can do to this. And they liked it. So I don't know how that all worked out, but yeah, that was if you want a glimpse behind the scenes, there's a lot of times where just communication doesn't always work out, and then we sort of get something together. But even in those cases, we can still put out something good.
Now, you also do a lot of coaching along with the setup work. And I know there are other set shops, so like Virtual Racing School. At least that one comes to mind because of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series and their sponsorship of Bobby Zelensky. Of course, you were on the car for, I believe it was Zach Novak at Richmond for Richmond Raceway Esports. How do you differ with your coaching and what you offer compared to a Virtual Racing School or the other various coaching and set shops that there are on iRacing?
Well, so the coaching with VRS, the one thing that everyone that came to us said was, the coaching there was good. You work with these pros, but it's so expensive. It's $100 an hour. And I mean, if people will pay it and they're getting that value out of it, that's awesome. I'm not, I have no issues with VRS. They are their own group. They do things right. You certainly get your money's worth out of them. It depends on what you're looking for out of a shop. If you're looking for, for a couple bucks a month, you get those setups and you go out and you run them, you are getting your money's worth with VRS, the telemetry, everything else. You will get your money's worth out of it. Versus with us, you pay a little bit more, but our setups are running up front. You get to work directly with us. You get, you have a face and name and everything associated with it. And with the coaching there, people were saying it was just so expensive. And, it was always something that we had done from the beginning. I used to do the coaching myself, and I wish I had more time to do coaching because it's so much fun working with customers and talking to people. And we sort of started letting people do sessions with our builders, which helped them a lot helped the customers a lot because the builder would explain things to them. They would say, this, when I was building the set, this is what I'm expecting people to do. And it also gave the builders a chance to look at how our customers were driving the setups and say, okay, so when I thought people would enter the corner like this, they're actually doing it differently. So if we add more front caster, the car will rotate better for people when they drive it like that, things like that. So it was a two-way street with learning with the builders and everything. And our relationship with Richmond Raceway Esports is phenomenal. I mean, those guys are incredible. We work a lot with them. We work a lot with NASCAR by extension. They are just phenomenal people, and I could not ask for anyone better to work with, and I'm so thankful for them. And because of that awesome, amazing relationship, I'm good friends with Zach and Jimmy, and I can talk to them about different things. And they actually came to me, both of them, and said, hey, we'd like to do coaching. And, they, obviously we pay them for it and everything, but they wanted to be involved. They get paid off of it and they have fun. So there's, a couple days a week, a couple hours per day of those days during the week where they are available for coaching. And you can go to our website, MaconiSetupShop.com/coaching and sign up for a session. And it's $25 for an hour with them. And so there's slots available, but those slots fill up. They're first come, first serve. So if you want, 7 p.m. on a Thursday and someone's already gotten that spot, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You can go with the other coach if you want. And then we also have Jacob Harberts, who does all of our dirt stuff, and River Hayes available as a coach as well, who does all of our short track stuff for coaching wise. He builds our late models alongside Bill Gross. And he is just an unbelievable talent on the short track side. So with our coaching, you have the benefit of working with people that are just unbelievably good, like Zach and Jimmy. They are just absolutely phenomenal. No one can drive cars at that level better than those guys. And you can work directly with them and they'll teach you how to drive. They'll teach you what to do. And they are really, really great coaches. I've sat in and watched sessions, and the way they talk to the customers, the way they work with them and help them out is amazing. They really understand the concept behind it of there's no shame in coming and working with a coach. It's like, people are worried. They're like, oh, don't tell anyone we're doing a coaching session and people won't see that I'm in a session. Right. And I totally understand that. And they sort of make it really easy for the customers to just get into the groove. Like, they are there to help you. They understand that they're there to help you and do a really, really great job at being nice and helping people, helping them find speed. And people walk out of it going, I know what I'm doing wrong. Like, you don't know what you don't know when it comes to things like that. And I mean, I've got 4,200 something I rating right now. I've been up at 46, 48, whatever it is. And I still look at my own mistakes and go, man, I don't know why I do that every single time, and I look at 1.5 mile tracks and I go, I am just not any good here, and if I'm at that point where I do iRacing as a job and I'm going, I've got so much that I need to learn. The people that do it for fun a couple days a week, yeah, you jump in with a coaching session and it helps out a ton. And what's really great is working with the coaches that we have is that they prioritize making sure people learn and that they feel comfortable and are enjoying it. It's not a chore for an hour that you sit and do coaching, and it's not like they're sitting there with like a strict teacher with a ruler slapping you on the knuckles. Like, they are there, they have fun with it, they will help you out and make sure that you not only find more speed but understand why you're finding more speed, so that you understand. So you do a session at Bristol and for the next week at wherever the next week may be, Richmond or Kansas, wherever, the next week what to carry over and how that will help you at other tracks as well.
So it seems like your site is all set up for asphalt setups, dirt setups, coaching, literally everything, iRacing. I mean, people can learn about different leagues that you're a part of, especially with ERCR and Anthony Alfredo. Speaking of Alfredo, you even have a book on your website. We'll put the cover right here so people can see what it is. How I Drive and How You Should Too. You wrote every bit of it, 10 chapters worth of information on here. Anthony Alfredo even helped with the forward on it. But tell us a little bit about this book.
Man, so I wrote last year a couple of setup guides and for the asphalt and had some help with the dirt one, but put together these setup guides and they sold really, really well. And people liked them and they liked learning all these different adjustments on the car. And as soon as I put that book, the setup guides out, people were immediately asking, okay, now how do I drive? I've built this setup. How do I drive it? What do I need to do? And the book was written, it's about 35 pages. So it's fairly long. It's a good amount of information inside the book, 10 chapters worth. And it really covers everything from where to get started with equipment, what equipment you need, what is iRacing, your safety rating versus your I rating, how official sessions work, how should you even approach practicing, so it's everything from information on how to get started on iRacing, what equipment you need, to what's the best way to hit the track in practice, when should you be racing, and when you make a mistake, what should you do when something like that happens. And my personal favorite chapter in the book is driving like a Richard. And the wordplay there, I always love that. But it covers pretty much winning with grace. So when you do win, doing it right, you're not rubbing it in, but you get to celebrate your victory. Or when you do something dumb and you cause a wreck and you drive like a Richard in that sense, how to go about fixing it. Because I've done a lot of races. I've done probably 3,000 different races over the past 3 years. Like, this is my full-time job and I love every second of it. But even I will still go out and make mistakes, and I will get into someone else and I'll turn around. There was a race last week. It was a tour mod race I was doing, and it was like 5 laps to go. And I just sent it in on a guy and I just washed up into him and I spun him around, and I felt so bad. Like, I just completely wiped him out from the lead. And, I apologized and everything was good there. But I always found that whenever I was on the receiving end of something like that, it just was the worst when they wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't apologize. They wouldn't say anything. They just pretend it didn't happen. It's like, come on, So that's where I sort of got the mindset of nobody will think less of you for apologizing, but everyone will think less of you if you don't. And so that was a big part of the book. And it's sort of just 3 months of time where I just sat down and wrote a little bit each day and got all these ideas out and on paper and edited of how to be a great member of the iRacing community, how to make iRacing fun for everybody and enjoyable for everybody, and how to be the best iRacer that you can possibly be. So the title is how I drive and how you should too. And it comes down to being the best. A lot of it does have to do with driving, but it's also about being a good member of the iRacing community and being the best person that you can be on the service and making it fun for everybody. And I sent Anthony a copy and he read it and liked it. And he wrote the foreword for it. So he gives a couple pages worth of information about how he got started on iRacing, and conveniently leaves out the part where I sort of shoved him back into it. But that, like I said, the conflicting accounts of that story, but how he got started with it, how he enjoys it, the time that he spent with Maconi Setup Shop, because he's one of our sponsored drivers and we get to use his name, and we all cheer for him, and he's an amazing person, and there's no way I can possibly thank him enough for everything he's done for me. And I hope I can do 1/10, 1/100th for him of what he's done for me, and everything that he's been able to do. And that book has gotten some really great feedback. It's gotten great feedback from the community, from people that have read it. What was really crazy is Mike Clay, who also races in Monday Night Racing, amazing guy. He apparently went on vacation and read the book while on vacation. So I see this notification pop up on my phone, tagged by Mike Clay with his, 250,000 followers, saying, I read through this book by Jeff Maconi Setup Shop, and I loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like, I'm looking at this and this is real. So it was a lot of work that went in. I'm an engineer by trade. So I graduated from Purdue with a degree in engineering, and I've always been very hands-on and a lot of studying and working behind the scenes, but squeezing in that time to write that book when I'm not really a writer while also running the company and everything else was draining, and it took a lot out of me, but I'm really glad I did. And I think the community has responded really well to it. And I'm really blown away by some of the responses that I've gotten from it, and that it's helped people out. So that's probably the coolest part of it.
To use your quote, I have driven like a Richard at times, both winning gracefully and not so gracefully. One of the graceful ones that comes to mind, the 2015 Daytona 500 on iRacing, which at that time it was part of the NIS, the NASCAR iRacing series.
Mm-hmm.
I won it, but I won it because I was the only undamaged car left.
Oh, okay.
With 50 laps to go.
Hey, a win is a win.
Yeah, that's true.
With 50 laps to go, I was the only undamaged car left. I won by 30 plus seconds.
Win's a win.
Yeah. And then one not so graceful, my first truck win, which was at Indianapolis in 2013, ended up coming down to a green-white checkered, even though they didn't have green-white checkers on iRacing at the time. The way it came out, it was a green-white checkered. But I dumped my teammate on the final corner for the win after he bounced off the wall, went across my nose, and he took out Ty Majeski.
Oh, so that wasn't me in Monday night. Okay, gotcha.
Oh boy.
I thought you were going to share that story.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a twofer right there. Your teammate and Ty Majeski. Oh God.
Yeah, and my teammate at that time, Stephen Esney, who was in the Coke Series at one point. I want to say the team at the time, we were either called Extreme Speed Racing, which was also the initials of the three drivers on the team. Esney, or I forget the way we came up with it, but it was Stephen Esney, myself, and Malik Ray. Or it was PSRG, Professional Sim Racers Group. I forget which one it was called at the time. That's how long ago it was. But going back to the setup shop, what are your plans for the rest of this year, next year, even 5 years from now? Where do you want to personally be with iRacing and with the setup shop?
Well, that's sort of all up in the air, and I never a year and a half ago, when I started this up, I never envisioned it being like this. My end goal in March and April and May of last year was to break even probably about $1,500 into what I had invested into iRacing and to make that back out of it. And we have hit and far surpassed that goal. And in the year since we launched the online store, because we pretty much launched an online store that automated everything, and that still runs, MaconiSetupShop.com, it's just blown up like you wouldn't believe. You know, we've done over 5,500 invoices. We've worked with thousands of customers. We've worked with amazing companies and groups like ERCR and Richard Childress Racing as a whole, Richard Racer Esports and everything. It's really blown up more than I ever imagined. And I'm at the point in my life right now. I'm 22 years old, about to turn 23, and just graduated college. I'm right now, my lease lapsed on my old apartment, so I'm home for a couple of weeks house sitting, and then I'm moving into a new apartment in Tennessee is the current plan. And the company is doing well enough right now, which I never expected, that I can do this as a full-time job. And the only thing is, running the company only takes up a couple hours each week. It's become an automated process. So I do a lot of planning for the future. I work on the website, I do all these things, but I can't, my mind just goes numb if I'm sitting and only working a couple hours each week. So I think what's going to end up happening is I'm going to be getting a job as an engineer. Just for the sake of personal privacy, I'm not going to say which company or anything of the sort, but down in Tennessee, which is where I'll be going to tomorrow to see the final tour of the facility and everything. So that's going to be a nice early morning flight. And with all that going on, I think it's going to come down to Maconi Setup Shop it started out as Jeff Maconi and the setups that he sells. And it's sort of grown to the point where people still know who I am. I'm still heavily involved with the company. I'm still working hard behind the scenes, but I'm not building the setups myself anymore. I used to build 4 or 5 setups each week, and now we have people that do it, and they are far better than I am, and they are just absolutely phenomenal at what they do. And they do the same, cars every single week, and we keep the same staff on board. So one thing that's come up is when we started, there were a lot of copycats that followed suit. There were a lot, and some better than others. And there's some that are, without naming names and everything, there are some that have a very negative influence in the community. There are some that are lying to people, and there are some that are scamming people. They are flat out just toxic to the community. They are lying, like looking directly into the camera. There are groups that are lying. There are groups that are scamming, and it's terrible that happens. Are they going to stay around forever? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, water always finds its level, and those, that it's already starting. The more toxic groups are sort of working their way out. With that in mind, my goal with Maconi Setup Shop is to continue on with the reputation that we have, and that people continue to have a great, solid source where you can get your setups and you can get your questions answered, and you can be a part of our community and work with other people and raise money for charity and work with all these companies and bring real world tracks and companies and groups and teams like Richard Childress Racing, like UNOH, like all these other groups that we've been able and fortunate enough to work with into the virtual world. And what we do really well is we are sort of the middleman between those groups, where they don't have to make that plunge and hire on someone to figure out this crazy world that is virtual racing. And we just sort of make that transition easy for them, where we say, okay, here's the event that you want to put on. We can make that happen. Here's how it's going to go down. Here's how we're going to be involved, and this is how it's all going to work. So I see a lot more of that in our future, especially with the recent deal with Richard Childress Racing. That race we did, the Big Power 75 at Twin Ring Montague in the Cup cars, went over phenomenally. People loved it. They had a great time. RCR was through the roof, and it's being pitched over to some of their higher ups there to continue on with that and make it bigger. So there's a lot more coming down the pipeline with that. I definitely see the company continuing in that role and being the premier name and the home for iRacing setups in our field. VRS is going to be a group that's always around, and they are, like I said, I have no issues with them. They are good people. They are providing their own product, and we're providing our own product, and they're two different ends of the spectrum. And I see myself, VRS, PDS, all these other some of the larger groups that are still around. I see us continuing to exist. There may be some other groups that continue to stay around, some more than others. Some I think should be around more than others. But I think the big names that you're seeing now, us, VRS, PDS, Craig's Setup Shop is another one that comes to mind. All good people at those groups that I just listed. I see those groups staying around because we all have our own little sections that we are really, really good at. VRS, phenomenal on the road, right? They've got all the different road setups and everything. Major's Garage comes to mind with their free setups. That's huge for them. And they are a great group of people. Mike Alette over there is an awesome, awesome guy. He is one of my favorite people to work with and talk to. And, we obviously keep our setups separate, but yeah, talking to him as a person and helping with events and giving each other advice, he is phenomenal, second to none over there. And so we all have our own little corner. So Majors has the free setups, and they do a lot with the coaching, and they've got some other big projects coming up. VRS has the telemetry. We've got now the subscription, and we have the setup guides and the coaching. And what we really have is the name and the face associated with it. So people know the name. I named the company Maconi Setup Shop because it puts a name with it. It's my reputation on the line, so my actions reflect directly on it. So I make sure that I try and keep a good image up, and people know when they see me. They see Jeff Maconi, they know Maconi Setup Shop, things like that. And I think that's going to continue to be strong for us in the future. As for myself personally, I will most likely be taking a job here in the next couple weeks as an engineer doing work in the Tennessee area, working down there and continuing. Don't worry, I will most certainly continue to run the company and be involved and race and keep doing all these awesome events. I can find that balance between the 9-to-5 job and the fun job of working and running the company and being involved in iRacing. But there's no telling what all can happen. I see iRacing continue to grow. As long as they keep on this path that they're on, they can continue to grow and be the premier name in virtual racing and subscription-based racing for as long as they want to be. As long as they keep this up and keep their heads on their shoulders, and they are doing a great, great job of it. They keep this up, they're going to be around for a long while. And as long as iRacing's around, Maconi Setup Shop is going to be around as well. But you never know, it could come out tomorrow where they say there's no more setup shops. You can't buy setups anymore. We're putting an end to it. We never know. And if that happens tomorrow, then I got to spend a year and a half of my life, making money playing pretend race cars. And that's the way I look at it. Yeah. I am the luckiest guy in the world that I get at 22 years old after graduating college to run my own company and basically play pretend race cars and make some money off of it and work with the people that I do and, bring the legendary, it still hasn't fully sunk in that, we're working with Richard Childress Racing and bringing such a legendary team into the virtual world and working with Richmond Raceway Esports and NASCAR and all these other groups that we are fortunate and blessed enough to work with. It's so surreal to me that it's all come together, but all I can tell you is not every day is easy. There's a lot of days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's one kick right after the other, and things are just not going, my way at all, or the company's way at all. But at the end of the day, if our biggest problem in the world is over iRacing, over simulated racing, we don't have any right to complain. We couldn't ask for anything more in the world.
I'm going to quote Bob Jenkins, who he recently just passed. You, Justin, and myself, we're a bunch of race fans that got lucky. We get to have fun. Granted, for you and me, it's primarily on the virtual side, but we got lucky. And I will admit, I got my start on iRacing writing for what was then iRacing News. I'm going a ways way back, and I got paid to write about pretend race cars.
Right.
That shut down in 2015. 5 years later, I'm once again writing about pretend race cars, this time for kicking tires. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on. Thank you for all that you do with Monday Night Racing, Podium Esports, and for the community as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. Like I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world that I get to do this. And of the hundreds of thousands of members on iRacing, the fact that I get to be in this position and do it as a job, gosh, my goal is to just make the community the best place it can possibly be. So if you see a Maconi Setup Shop event coming up in the future, you see one of our charity events going on, we've got some more coming up. We would love to have you. We would love to have you involved. And the goal is just, there's so much that's been done by the community for me. I give back as much as I possibly can to the community, and the whole team at Maconi Setup Shop feels the same way. So if you're ever looking for setups, for coaching, for guides, for our booklet, for anything of the sort, for other services that will be coming soon that I cannot yet announce, the team will kill me if I announce it early, but more is definitely coming. Head over to MaconiSetupShop.com. But thank you to you guys so much for letting me come on here. It's been an absolute blast. It's always great talking to you, Seth. Justin, awesome working with you. And thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity to show up and talk about pretend race cars for an hour with you guys. Thank you.
Well, a great chat with Jeff Maconi, such a very enthusiastic guy about iRacing and the whole digital esports realm and stuff like that. But let's get into some of the real life stuff because, like I said, we had that 2-week Olympic break, and here we are racing at Watkins Glen. And sure enough, man, just when you think he's might be on that downward slope, nope, not even close. Kyle Larson takes another win, his 5th of the season out at Watkins Glen, his 2nd on a road course this season. He won earlier at Sonoma over at my side of the country, and now on the complete opposite side of the country out in New York, wins at one of the fastest road courses, Watkins Glen. Also the Truck Series finishing up their regular season. I know that's really weird. It honestly caught a lot of people off guard. I think I know it caught me off guard. I didn't think it was already over, but John Hunter Nemechek getting the overall win for the regular season as the regular season champion there. So.
And that gives him an extra 15 playoff points, if I remember correctly. And although it's minor because it doesn't affect the playoffs, Chandler Smith was disqualified from the race after failing post-race heights. However, his gap over, I forget who it was. I want to say it might have been Johnny Soller. It went from 29 points down to, I think it was 18 points or something like that. So he still had enough of a gap to make the playoffs. And it doesn't affect his position because he was going to be 10th and he's still 10th.
Yeah, and he didn't win any stages or anything like that.
Correct.
So he didn't have any playoff points he lost. So yeah, so that's pretty much just going to get them started right away. They only have 7 races in their playoffs, unlike Xfinity and Cup. So they'll start off with a round of 10, do 3 races, cut 2 drivers, do a round of 8, and then they'll have their championship 4 out at Phoenix for declaring the 2021 champion. But I mean, obviously with the Cup race, you have Elliott and Larson, who are probably the 2 best when it comes to road courses right now. And then, of course, right behind them, probably the other 2 who are the other 2 best, Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch. But Larson's putting a statement out here, Seth. I don't know, go back maybe 5, 6, 7 races ago, we all thought Hamlin was going to take those 15 points to the championship. Here we are, just 3 races left in the regular season. Who's going to win it? They're tied right now.
Well, honestly, if you're looking at the momentum, you would say Larson. if you're looking at the consistency, you would say Hamlin. Because Hamlin has been more consistent throughout the entire year. Granted, lately it hasn't shown as much, but some of that has been because of freak issues, running out of gas with 2 laps to go, having a lug nut fly into the left front tire, getting caught up in a wreck. Some of that stuff is just freak incidents that don't happen all that often. So it really depends on which lane you want to take. Do you want to take the momentum with Larson, or do you want to take the consistency with Hamlin?
Well, and then the other part too is you have 2 unknowns out of the 3 races left. Michigan, obviously, we've raced there for forever, but you got the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. So we're doing the Indy road course. So we're literally racing backwards. It's a right turn road course, just like Watkins Glen. We've never raced there in the Cup Series. Xfinity raced there last year, so this will be a first time for the Cup drivers. And then the regular season ends at Daytona on the big restrictor plate oval.
So I'm gonna throw this out there, but you have Kevin Harvick running the Xfinity race this weekend to try to get some more experience. You have Briscoe, who won there last year in the Xfinity series. So who's to say that Briscoe might not steal this weekend, Harvick win at Michigan, and then have somebody like Bubba Wallace or Matthew Benedetto win at Daytona with only 3 spots left in the playoffs? If Hamlin's not the regular season champion, he's out.
You're making a lot of Hamlin fans upset right now. Well, and even that too, you don't even necessarily have to have someone win, right? Because Harvick's only 89 points up. And as we've seen how fast someone like Kyle Larson has closed the gap on Denny Hamlin, that 89 points can go really fast, because especially since max points is 60 a race, that's not a lot of a gap left for the regular season, considering how inconsistent that number 4 car has been, and then considering that they nor Hamlin in the 11 have been in victory lane to really lock in and secure that spot. Harvick could be in trouble here if something happens in one of these next 3 races.
Yeah, both Harvick and Hamlin might be in trouble. Who would have thought that the 2 drivers that won that combined 18 races last year would be winless somewhere around 23 races into the season?
And possibly, having the mathematical possibility of not being able to go into the playoffs. Exactly. And then on top of that, the 2 guys on the bubble, Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon. It's almost like Richard Childress has to go over there and flip a coin and be like, all right, who's going to go in? Who's going to be stuck out? Because Austin Dillon can easily win at Daytona. He's done that before. You've got Tyler Reddick, who knows how to drive a car at high speeds on a loose racetrack. So he's got a good shot at a very strong finish and maybe even a win at Michigan. And obviously IMS is brand new. We don't really know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, and it will be fun to watch. I mean, granted, I'm pretty sure between you and I, we know who our picks are for fantasy for IMS. I know you're picking before me. And if I had to guess, you're going to pick Chase Elliott.
Oh, of course.
And my pick is Kyle Larson.
There you go. See? So if you guys want to know what's happening right now, Jerry Jordan has been trying to get in, and I've been purposely trying to not let him in so we could get our picks in before him, but I guess it wouldn't have mattered anyway because I think he's ahead of both of us, but
he is.
No. I mean, look, why did we pick those 2, right? If you look at how they are doing combined on all the road courses, in fact, I have NASCAR schedule here. So Watkins Glen, Kyle Larson wins, right? You go to Road America, Chase Elliott wins. You go to, Pocono is really a weird track. It's very different. Some people say it's the road course of ovals, and you had Kyle Larson almost win both of those. Then you come all the way up here. Let's see, Sonoma, Kyle Larson wins, right? Circuit of the Americas, where it's pouring rain, a completely different track, and 4.5 miles long. Nope. Chase Elliott, not a problem, goes out there and wins that. The only road course that neither of these 2 have won so far this year, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the season, second race of the year, and Christopher Bell takes it
And
at Daytona.
And let me throw this out there. In both that race and the Clash, Chase Elliott dominated the races and got spun late.
Yeah, and here's the crazy part. In that race, in the Daytona road course, the one where Christopher Bell won, Chase Elliott finished 21st and Kyle Larson in 30th. So if you take that mulligan out,
and I think both of them were taken out either in wrecks or were spun in that race, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I believe so. But I mean, look, those two are just the absolute goes-tos. I mean, if you want some other good picks, I wouldn't be surprised if someone picks Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch. Obviously, those guys know how to get around road courses. They know how to drive these cup cars and things like that. So those are going to be strong picks. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hendrick stable altogether gets completely swept out. And everyone takes all of those. Denny Hamlin would be another solid pick and stuff like that. And then you were mentioning too, he would have a possibility of a win. And I think he'd be a really solid, very quiet pick would be a Chase Briscoe.
Yeah. And just to put this into perspective, Hendrick Motorsports, that's in this case, I'm talking about Chase and Kyle Larson, have won 7 of the last 8 Cup Series points paying road course races.
Jeez, man, that's
dates back to 2019.
That is ridiculous. That's crazy. All right, what I think we have to do Xfinity picks because I think trucks have this weekend off, right?
Trucks have this weekend off. For Xfinity, I'm actually gonna go for a long shot here. Well, some might consider it a long shot since Ty Gibbs is in the field, but for a long shot, I'm going to go with AJ Allmendinger.
Ooh, so you're taking my pick. I'm just gonna pull a Jerry there. That's all that is. Okay. So that's who I was thinking of picking. I actually haven't had a chance to look at the entry list.
Max Pappas is actually running.
Oh,
and
okay.
And just a little fun fact, this is the first NASCAR National Series race that you have 5 either active or alumni of the NASCAR Wayland Euro Series competing in the same race.
Interesting. And then you mentioned too, Kevin Harvick also.
Yeah, Max Pappas, Mike Snyder, Will Rogers, which Will is a road course ringer for all intents and purposes. Max is obviously, Mike's full-time. Then you also have Lawrence Hazeman's the 2019 Euro Series champion, and Giorgio Maggi, who is making going to attempt to make his Xfinity Series debut.
Yeah, because there's 44 on this entry list.
And there's qualifying, and only 36 make it.
Wow.
Unless there's lightning.
Yikes. Well, that'll be fun. Man, there are some good names making this field for either the first time or a couple one-offs. But you know what? I'm going to go not too far away from you. I'm going to stay in the colleague stable, and I'm going to say Justin Haley. That's my pick in the number 11. I want to go with a Justin Allgaier or a Noah Gragson, but for some reason, when it came to this race last year, even though it was a nice 4-way battle there at the end, it was all the colleague drivers racing against Chase Briscoe, really. I know Noah Gragson was there in the mix there as well at the end. But you can't go wrong with the colleague drivers. They knew how to get around this track last year, so I think that's kind of the way to go this year for this race at the IMS road course. So, but other than that, I think those are our picks. Everyone else is going to have to send them in over Slack or something. So sucks to be everyone else.
The perks of being the only two on the show.
That's right. Cool. Well, considering Jerry probably wouldn't have wanted to talk about getting 1 point in the truck race from the DQ, I think that'll wrap this episode up.
Let me just say one more thing while we're talking about picks. We're doing not only Cup, Xfinity, and truck points. We're doing combined points. I think your wife is leading the combined points.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you know what? Let me pull that up. I think you're right.
I have it right here.
Yeah, combined. So Jerry's leading the cup only points, and we just started to track truck points because we started to do that late in the year. So we were going to do the first race as kind of like our playoff setup, just because it was kind of a whatever. And Jerry's DQ is down to 1 point, and Christian is leading that. Rachel not too far behind at 46. Christian with 50 points, so she's only 4 points back. Jerry's leading the cup only points, and Rachel's about 40 back, roughly 43 to be exact. But yeah, combined points, Rachel with 807, Jerry with 805.
Yep.
Oh man, Jerry of course is not liking the combined scenario. I'm sure he doesn't like the truck only points either.
Probably not.
Something tells me that. But hey, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that interview. It's a very unique one. Not much that we get to do with behind the scenes regarding iRacing, and especially with iRacing setups. So hope you enjoyed listening to some of that expertise from Jeff Maconi. But for Seth Eggert and myself, Justin Schuoler, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Kickin' Show. We'll see you guys next week.